Hi everyone, I'm Nick from Coffee Before Arch and welcome back to another episode of Python 3 Crash Course. And today we're going to look at some useful operations that we can do with string type variables. So a lot of times when we have a string, our main goal may not be to just say print it out to the console. That's pretty trivial. We can just call print. A lot of times though, we might be reading in stuff from a file, and when we read in things from a file, we may read it in as a string, and we may want to split it up into, say, more strings. We may want only part of a single string that we read in, and we may want to do, a couple other operations with it. So we're going to go over some of the built-in things we can do with strings. We'll open up our example for today, which will be stringmanipulation.py. So to start out, we're going to take a string in from the console. So we're going to do this doing argv. If you're unfamiliar with argv or getting command line inputs, see our other video on that. So we'll go ahead and read in one string, and then we'll also play around with this test string. So the first thing we can do is, what if we only want a subset of the string? So it's pretty simple. The format, when we're indexing it, we can index a slice of the string, so it'll be called a slice. To get a slice of the string, we use these colons inside of the brackets. And what this format says is, of this string, remember inside of a string, it's kind of like a list where every element in the list is a new character. And so we can access it just like that. So in this case, this says, I want the slice of the string that starts at character 0, goes all the way up to, but not including, this character that's at position 4, and I want you to look for characters one at a time. So that means that it's going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going to take characters 0, 1, 2, 3, and then that's what it will return. So in this case, we'll print out just test, because that's from 0 up to, but not including 4, so 0 to 3, and we went a step size of 1. Now, if we change the step size to something like 2, well, it changed a little bit differently. So it's still the same overall concept. It'll be from 0 to 4, except this time the step size is 2. So instead we'll get character 0, but instead of character 1 as well, we'll get character 2. So we'll get T and S. And then we won't get character 4 because remember, it's up to, but not including. So it's non-inclusive right there. But we'll go ahead and do this. Now, a lot of times though, we can leave off some of these numbers. So in this case, the default step size is 1. So we could write this slice equivalently like this. And this just says go from 0 to 4, and the step size is implicitly 1. If we want to be explicit, we can write it like this. And so we'll show that we can be implicit in a number of ways. So in this case, we can do the slice of a string starting at character 5 to the end of the string. So if we don't put an end point when we're doing a slice, the default is to go all the way to the end of the string. And then again, we don't have a default for step size, so it's implicitly 1. So in this case, we'll print from 5 to the end. Now remember, the lower bound in this is included. So just like we went from 0 to 4, not including 4 though, this will go from 5 to the end. So in this case, it will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so that's going to be how we do slices, so if we want parts of a string. Now, there may be situations where, we don't just care about part of a string, or we don't just want, say, a big string that we constantly have to slice up. So we can kind of fix this using this built-in to the data type of strings, which is the split method. And what this split method does, it takes a string as an input, and it will return a new string. So we'll save it into S again, so we'll overwrite test string. So we'll take our original string, and then if it finds that character, it splits it at that point. And so what you're left with is a collection of strings split by a specific delimiter. In this case, we can just call it split without any arguments, and the default would be split on a space. But in this case, we'll just be explicit and we'll say with a space. So what this will return will be two separate strings right here. So we'll print that out. Now, there may be situations where we want to go the other direction. So in this case, we can call this string, which will be just a space in this case, dot join s. And this says, I want you to take all of these items in this list s. Remember, we made a list here when we split it up by the space. So we got two strings in a list here. Now, if we want to join them back together, we say space inside of quotes dot join s. Now, it doesn't just have to be a space here. We can put really whatever we want. And between every single list item, it will insert whatever is in these quotes. So in this case, we just want to replace the space that we originally had. So we'll just use a space and we'll print that. Now, what we'll take in from the command line will be what's known as a comma-separated variable kind of format. And that's where we have lots of data separated by commas. So that'll be things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but all separated by commas. So if we have some large data file, a lot of times we'll store data in CSV files because it's very easy to work with. So let's say, it's one of the more simple ways to represent data. So you just throw commas in between it, and then those will say represent different rows. And so if you want to import that into Excel or another type of spreadsheet software, a lot of times they have a way to read in a comma separated variable file and automatically bin them into columns. So we can kind of show that we can do a similar thing. And so instead of splitting on a space this time, we'll take this string of numbers separated by commas, and we'll say split this string, except I want you to split it every single comma. So this will take out all the commas, and where the commas were, that will be the point between two strings now. So those two things will now be strings. Now, we'll go ahead and print that out as well. Now remember though, since we're taking this as a command line input, the type is going to be a string. So if we actually wanted to work on it as far as data goes, we'd have to cast it as an integer or a floating point number as well. But for this case, we've already kind of gone over casting, and that's kind of a trivial thing. So we'll just go ahead and split it and then print it out, showing that we can separate these variables. Now, in this case, it may be something we may want to do is say take a string and make it all uppercase, or take a string and make it all lowercase. So if you think about, times where there may be times where, say, on a website, the username that you have is not case sensitive. So you may want to just have everything stored as one very easily readable format. So instead of having maybe alternating, uppercase, lowercase, you can just go ahead and set it to be all uppercase or all lowercase. So it's just an example usage. So let's go ahead and try these out. We'll call Python, let's go to the console first, Python3 on string manipulation.py. And we have to give it an input. So in this case, we'll call it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, we're doing this on this pseudo comma separated variable data. So let's see what happens. So first, we show that when we do slicing, we can index part of a string. So our original string was test string, all one string. Then we sliced out test and string. Then if we call split on a string, we get a list back that has the separated strings there. So we had a space in between test and string. We split with the space as our argument, and it gave us back the two strings with the space being the separating point. Then we join them back together using the join method. Then here's our input of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We called split on that input, and we split it with a comma now instead of a space. And so now we have a list of all of these numbers. Now they're represented as strings, but like I said, we could easily cast them as integers. And then we can make it all uppercase our original test string, and then we can make it all lowercase. So these are just some of the operations that we can do with strings. They can be, really useful if we have to do any kind of text processing, or even manipulate or working with data. If we want to, read in a bunch of commas, read in a big comma separated variable file, and then, automatically put that into an array. We don't have to, one by one look at the characters. We can just call split and it will do it for us. So like I said, that's going to do it with our example for today. If we go to github.com/coffeebeforearch, we have all the previous videos under the Python crash course, as well as all the code. And if we go to fundamental concepts, and then we go to variables, and we go to string manipulation, here's our example that we worked through today. Feel free to download this, test it out. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have any specific topics that you would like to cover, make sure to just let me know and I'd be happy to help out. So as always, I'm Nick from Coffee Before Arch, and I hope you have a nice day.